Hi, my name is Paul Schursch and welcome to my shop. Welcome to the second segment of Hand Skills Building a Jewelry Box. Last time we cut the wood, we got all our tools together, and now it's time to join the box. I know that the inside is really my reference surface, and I really need to keep track of where that inside is because that's where I'm going to base all my joinery off of. As you remember, the joinery block, which is 7 3/4 of an inch, will be placed right in the middle on either side. I need to do some middle marks and use the middle marks as a reference. So 7 3/4. Be able to make a line here and bring it around to the side and up to the top. I have it on this piece of plywood here because the bench is sometimes a little rough and I'll be clamping some pieces on. Also, with the clamps that I have attached here, I need to lift it off a little bit off the bench so the clamps don't interfere with my cut. Line this up right on my middle line. And now it's time for my joint. Make sure that this is quite secure. The last thing I want to do is have this shift around during the cut. The joint that I'm going to be putting in here is really exactly in the middle of this board. So this fence is established here where it is exactly 2 inches from the middle line over to the edge. So that side is done, and now this side. The last part of this joint will involve the front and the back. This is where a lot of people get confused. Again, my middle is the reference surface, so I really need to establish the reference surface. That is the same surface here that the joinery block was in. So as I plunged here using this block as a reference surface, I also need to plunge here using this as a reference surface. The joinery is now complete, and let's test assemble the case to see if it actually fits. It's nice and secure, nice and snug. If you plunge a biscuit in the wrong place, or if you misadjust it or it slips, you can always glue a small little biscuit in, cut it off flush with the surface, and replunge a new biscuit hole. That also works. Okay, the box is now joined together, and now comes time to do the side profile. I will be cutting the strips off the top and the bottom, but the side profile I would like to do next. The blueprint has a variety of different profiles, as you can see here. Different profiles one can use. I've used this one with a scalloped divot. I find that very attractive, and I'm also using that same scalloped divot in the handle. I've taken a photocopy of this, and I am now going to put this photocopy onto a template. The template is a piece of gray board, or what I call paper chipboard, and it needs to be adhered using spray adhesive. The template is now cut out, and now I need to transfer it onto my piece of wood. Now it comes time to cut it out. Once these pieces are cut out, it is time to shape them. And now those two edges are now complete. So at this point, I am almost ready to glue up the case, but I still need to trim off the lip and the bottom for this case on the table saw. The top will need a 3/4 inch strip and the bottom needs to be 5/8. So it'll leave me with a 1/2 inch leftover strip, which I'll utilize for other things. And the top, I know this is the top because of the triangle here. And I want to make sure that I cut them all in sequence. And now I need to cut the small strip, the 5/8 of an inch strip, off the bottom. I am ready now to cut these into smaller strips. Here are my lids, and now the smaller strips. For this, I'll use a feather board. Now, the last thing that I need to do on these front and back is to cut the groove out, which will be necessary for my floor panel to set in. 1/4 inch panel, so I want to make it a little bit more. For this process, I will need to take out the splitter so I can ride the board on top, and I'll need to set a proper depth. So that's 1/4 plus 1/16. This is the inside of the box. I'll have a groove here, and I'll also have a groove here. Good. Okay, so these are the parts that came off the table saw. I have my 2 lid pieces here, all the 4 strips, which I'll set aside for later. And now I can clean up some of the burn marks and start sanding this piece in preparation for glue up. Okay, get the other side. Make sure the grain is going the right direction. As you can see, the biscuit is very close to the ends, but it doesn't protrude past the ends. That's why I use number 0. And now I think I'm ready to sand the insides, and I can use a cabinet scraper. To get rid of the planing marks or any surface defects. I'm always doing the insides. Now I'm also doing on these front and back, because there's an overhanging lip on the sides, because of that overhanging lip, it's going to be very hard for me to get to the insides here, where this comes together. You notice that I will not be able to really get the insides here, so I'm actually going to finish sand and surface everything except the outside of the side. I'm now ready for dry fitting. We have these pieces and these. These marks are a little faint, so I'm going to put them back on. I also have a couple of spacers which I've cut that are 5/8 of an inch space. Since these lamellos allow, or these biscuit joints, allow sort of a lateral movement of a joint, I want to be able to space them properly on these little sticks. These are standoffs. Looks good. All right, so dry fit also includes clamps. So what I'm checking for is that all the joints do seat up tight from the inside and out, which they appear to do. I want to check my reveals and my standoffs. Everything seems to be fine. Now it's time to go to glue up. With this glue, you have a fairly short open time. Maybe in 10 minutes, I really have to have this case work together. If you need more time, you can use this lower setting glue, but this one should be fine for this process. I always put glue inside the joint, but never on the biscuit itself, because the biscuits are pressed beechwood, and when they hit the moisture, they will expand, and it will be very, very tough to get them in. These small divider sticks will tell me at least a crosswise dimension, whether it is, and right now, which is pretty miraculous, this rarely happens, that this is perfectly square at this moment. If this case is out of alignment, if it's a parallelogram such as like this, what I would need to do is put clamp pressure on the opposing corners to bring it back into alignment. The way I do that is I can just tap it with a mallet a little bit, tighten it down, and tap it down here, tighten it down, and I've effectively pushed this case over this way. All the joints appear to be tight. Now it's time for cleanup. So I can also take these sticks here to get into the corners and make sure that I have everything nice and wet. I'm not worried about watermarks. One of the things that I usually say is, how do you prevent water spotting? Well, the way to prevent water spotting is to wet everything. Okay, the lid is also now ready to glue up. While I have the glue brush wet, might as well do it. Now remember that the grain direction, when I have right here the two pieces that they're matched visually, they match pretty well. I made these marks earlier. The grain is continuous from one board to the next. This lid will be surfaced down to 1/2 inch. I do want to make sure that I am lined up on the ends because I don't have a whole lot of spare. These are the same size as the front and the back. The lid will be cut slightly to act as a reveal, so it passes within the box. I'm maybe taking off 1/16 of an inch, and the lid will also need to be trimmed down ever so slightly, so I'm not worried about clamping marks on the edge. At this point, I can take a small bit of a rag to clean off the glue. I'm not worried about sizing the whole panel because it will be thickness down, and I can set this aside until it dries. Okay, so now it's time to unclamp the box. It appears that the joints are all nice and tight. There's no glue left over, and I've already sanded the insides of the box. The wetting of the grain has made the hair stand up just a little bit, but now it's time to sand the rest of the box. Start off with 100 grit, 120, 180, 220. I wouldn't go much past 220. These are the strips that I cut earlier. These are all now sanded and ready to glue in. I've also trimmed them down to a 7 3/4 inch length. There will be two strips that will go in both the top and the bottom, right here. This one will go in right here. And one of them, the one on the bottom here, this is for floor stop, so I can screw my floor into this strip here. So gluing it up is a relatively easy process of just applying glue. Generally, I'll probably do it only on one surface and put it in. And clamping it in won't need a whole lot of pressure here. You can use a spring clamp, adjustable C-clamp, Irwin clamps, it all works. Afterwards, it does need to be cleaned up on the inside and outside, any kind of a glue line. The outside glue line will be easier to remove afterwards, but the inside is something that I want to catch now. And a little bit of cleanup on the inside down here where one would be able to see it. And I'll repeat this for the other side. Now that the stops have been glued in, the next time we meet, we'll be making a knob, gluing the fabric onto the floor, hinging the lid, and finishing this jewelry box. Until next time.